And Murray, you want to help me by unmuting people or calling on them? Because I've got a lot flying by. You and I will do it together. How's that sound? Okay, so Claire Mulgrew, why don't you come off mute and go ahead and ask your question. I will go ahead and unmute you. So Claire, if you just talk, we'll be able to hear you.
Thanks, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. So my question was around how you would suggest a leadership team or a group of people support a CEO who is temporarily ill-equipped to lead when he or she is generally seen as the highest person or the leader of a company.
Right, and so one of the things we touched on earlier this evening or this morning was the difference between management and leadership. And one of the places where stress is caused is when managers think that they are allowed to be leaders, even though they're not doing any of the work to be a leader. And this is how you end up with TV shows like The Office. That what we're trying to do is simultaneously manage an industrial entity that depends on authority, that depends on compliance, but we mistakenly believe that that allows us to be a leader as well. And so the opportunity is to gain enrollment, if you have the opportunity to do so, with a manager to say, do you also want to lead, or is managing this well enough? Because if you also want to lead, you're going to have to earn enrollment. You cannot lead just because people have to follow you. That's just managing. And so I would invest the cycles up front to earn enrollment on coaching. If the person isn't open to being coached on how to lead, then you can't do anything, because it's really hard to teach somebody something against their will. But if you can, in a way that doesn't hurt their status, in a way that doesn't undermine their authority as a manager, get them to engage in the process of going somewhere with you, you can help them become a better leader. And I've seen this happen with people. I've done this with people. The key is safety. If they have emotional safety, they're much more likely to enroll with you. And that's why it almost never works in public. It almost never works at a showdown in front of other people, because in those moments they get to grab their manager hat and then nothing happens. So thank you, Claire. That was a great bridge to the next thing.
There's a great question from Suzanne Seth. How do I communicate a compelling vision to my team when I don't feel I am particularly compelling?
Right. So what does it even mean to be compelling? I've studied a lot of leaders through the centuries, and the only thing they have in common is that they were leaders. That if you compare, everyone from the Mahatma, who was a skinny guy without a fancy outfit, to people who weren't eloquent, to people who were, to people who weren't good looking, to people who were, to people who had authority, to people who didn't. What they all have in common is that they led. That's it. So where does that come from? It comes again from this idea of enrollment. Why on earth would anyone want to follow you? Why would they trust you? And part of it involves telling them things they already know, telling them things they already believe, reinforcing that you want to go where they want to go. Because persuading someone to go somewhere they don't want to go is really, really hard. Almost impossible, because people have so many options. You can't get somebody to watch a video that they don't want to watch. You can't get someone to do a brave act that they don't want to do. So what you can do is find the people who do want to do that thing. And so if we think about the difference in the US between the Marines and, say, the Coast Guard, the Marines are not easy to get into. The Coast Guard will take most people. And as a result, the Marines can have a more difficult basic training than the Coast Guard can. And as a result, once you're a Marine, you have a different level of performance, compliance, leadership, authority than you do if you're in the Coast Guard, because they're different things for different people. So the challenge is to find people like us to figure out what things like this are and to establish a culture so that together we can go forward. Sonia had a question that segues right into this. Sonia, you want to come off mute and ask it?
Yeah, no, great. I think you've given me a lot of insight as to an answer to that question, but I've just often wondered, when does leading by example really work? In terms of, you show up every day, you get your hands dirty and you do the hard yards, and you just assume that will translate through the chain, but it doesn't. And I've been guilty of that, for many years. So would love to hear your thoughts.
Right. Great question. A key part here, we know the CEO who works more hours than anybody in the organization. We know the fast food manager who's willing to clean the griddle. And at some level, this idea of walking in the trenches with people earns you a level of respect. But we also know of organizations that perform beautifully, where the leader does none of those things, where the leader is busy doing things that only the leader can do, and the people are happy to have them do it. That Marshall Salins, working together with David Graeber, wrote a really detailed scholarly work called On Kings that came out 2 years ago, 700 pages long. It's about all of these nationalities I have never heard of. It reads like fiction. And what they discovered is that there's a long history in the monarchy of kings that have come from away, not of this country. And these kings don't follow the social mores. They don't marry who they're supposed to marry. They don't behave the way they're supposed to behave. And they never act like a commoner. And amazingly, some people are drawn to these kings. And some of these kings have actually become some of the most effective kings. So it's pretty clear that being one of the people isn't the key that unlocks the secret to leadership. I think what does is not sympathy, but a level of empathy and affiliation and enrollment, because people are looking for different kinds of status roles. If you are eager to follow an authoritarian dominating figure, you don't want that figure to be in the trenches digging a latrine, because that undermines everything you just signed up for. And so I guess the key is, what's the promise? If you're going to begin by enrolling people to join your cause by saying, I'm just like you and I'm going to do it side by side with you, and then the first chance you get, you don't do it with them, it's not going to work. But if you say, I am the royalty, have a direct line to someone from another planet who's telling me what to do, look how much we've already accomplished, do you want to come? That person says, oh, great, I need to be part of that. And that, for example, is why you can be the CEO of Harley Davidson without being a member of a motorcycle gang. Because the people who join Harley Davidson don't join because they want to be like the CEO. They join because they want the CEO to win. And that's a choice. Marie, what you got?
Thank you.
There are so many great questions. This is fantastic. I think the question from Carrie, how do we encourage people to embrace uncertainty and ambiguity when they are scared and afraid? So we all talked about our imposter, but what if someone else doesn't have that awareness?
Right. So let's agree that everyone feels like an imposter. Everyone has trouble with uncertainty. Everyone has trouble with fear. If you are truly fearless, you're a psychopath. Fear is a good thing. Do not put your hand on a hot stove. Just don't do that, because for a good reason, you are afraid of it. Fear keeps us going. And reassurance is futile. That telling you again and again that everything is going to be okay makes the problem worse. And the reason it makes the problem worse is I can't be here the next time, and the time after that, and the time after that. And if any of you have raised children, you've learned this, that the way you raise a high-functioning kid is when they're 5 or 6 or 7, or even 2. You don't rescue them every single time, because if you do, they never gain the confidence in themselves to solve problems that are in front of them. So here's the thing. Many of the people who work for you were indoctrinated in the industrial system. And the industrial system made a very clear deal. And the deal is, do what we say, you'll get prizes. If you keep doing what we'll say, you'll keep getting prizes. And then you can retire. That's the deal. And we trained people on that deal for a really long time. And then they show up at work and we say, oh, and by the way, we're sheltering in place, we're working from home, you have to make up all your own rules, you might get fired tomorrow, and you have to make your own decisions and own them. Well, no wonder people are freaking out. That's not what they signed up for. And so the opportunity we have as leaders is not to abdicate what people have given us in terms of their desire to follow, but to gradually earn confidence and enrollment by offering people the chance to solve interesting problems with very low risk. Because if they solve an interesting problem with low risk, they might want to do it again, and then again, and then again, until they're taking a slightly bigger risk. So when you see someone surfing big waves, they didn't start by surfing big waves. And when you see someone riding a bike, they didn't start by riding a bike. This incremental process of learning is a series of incompetencies and failures on the way to knowing we can handle it. So what we have to do when we face uncertainty is not say, everybody, let's have a vote, figure out what you want to do. You're responsible. Instead, it's saying, I'm not giving out authority anymore, but if responsibility is on offer, who wants a little bit of it? Who wants to take on a small problem? Who wants to be a member not of an industrial setting, but a studio where you show up, you do a little thing, and if it works, you get a bigger thing to do. And this is how every film director becomes a film director. This is how every entrepreneur becomes an entrepreneur. Not all at once, but drip by drip. Okay, I'm looking while you're looking. Saurabh, who got one of the trivia questions right at the beginning. Do you want to come off mute? Let me see if I can help make that happen. There we go, if I go like that. Saurabh is off mute.
Hi. So my question is, we're talking a lot about leadership. Taking the reverse side of it, what exactly do people want to follow? What is more important to people? Is it about culture? Is it about values? Is it about seeing a good example? Or what really drives people?
Okay, so here's the deal. Everybody who disagrees with you about politics, about religion, about where they work, about what's important to them, everyone who disagrees with you is correct. Given who they are, given what they know, given what they want, they're doing exactly the right thing. So the people who think that there are aliens from foreign planets who are coming down and dressing in dinosaur costumes, they're correct. Based on who they are, what they know, what they believe, it gives them comfort to believe that. And so we look at who people are already following. We look at what kind of organizations they sign up for. So there are talented people who are 19 years old who a couple of months ago, instead of doing a job that was hard to get, went to Target or Walmart or whatever, because they were able to get a job by answering 5 questions on a touch screen, and they were hired. And then they got a job for a lousy boss, schlepping stuff in the storeroom, getting yelled at, and they thrived doing it because that's what they signed up for. It's not personal. I would last like 12 seconds in an organization like that. So it's not that one leader is right or not. It's that, are you finding the right people who are enrolled in the journey that you want to go on? And if you're not, then there's something wrong. You're missing the point. You're missing the genre, the way it all aligns, the way the story fits together. And so that's why I can't give anybody a manual on how to lead, but maybe I can give you a compass, and maybe you can start to see the flavors of how they all fit together. And I'll just throw it aside. There were 900 of you when we started this, and when we went into breakout rooms, about 60 people had trouble doing it. And I want to thank those 60 people for their patience. And over the next 5 or 10 minutes, I helped virtually all of them find where they were going. The people who couldn't figure out how to get to the room they were going to weren't dumb. And I didn't do anything wrong in the way we set up the instructions. It's just based on the way they see the internet, based on the way their technology works, My story wasn't resonating. It was like I was speaking to them in Italian. And what we have to realize is that the work we make, no matter how hard we work to make it bulletproof, never is. And the journey we want to go on will never appeal to everyone. But instead of watering it down and trying to make it for everyone, what we ought to do is enrich it and try to make it for someone. Murray, call on somebody.
Yeah, well, there's quite a few questions about leadership and coronavirus. And so there's not necessarily a specific one, but maybe if you have some just general thoughts on where we are in the world and what that means for leadership right now.
Yeah. Here's the thing. It doesn't pay to go to the beach and try to sell hot dogs when sharks are eating people. It's just no one's in the mood. And the people who are in a hurry to say, what tactics should I use right now so I can make May's payroll? It's too late. I don't know what to tell you about making May's payroll. There's no emergency tactic that's going to help you. It feels to me two things. One, this is a slog. If you didn't think it was a slog before, I hope you realize it's a slog now. And what makes things a slog is they have another side. Slogs have an end. And there will be another side at the end of this slog. And the question is, first, who do you want to be on the other side? On the other side of the slog, when we write the history of who you were and what you did, what should we say about you? And second, while we're in the slog, some people would like a discount. Some people would like you to give them something. But most people want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be understood. They want the people around them to know that someone actually sees them. So those ads that are running worldwide, where every company is making the same ad that looks exactly the same, that doesn't say anything. It just says, we had an ad budget we had to fill this week. Everyone's at home. This is the stock photos we spliced together. Look how safe we're playing it. No, that's not what people want. On the other hand, here in the US, there's a much hated internet company called Verizon. And they're hated for very good reasons. It's not unusual to be on hold for 2 or 3 hours and have them hang up on you a few times. Well, I had to fix an internet thing for an organization that I was helping. And I dreaded the fact that I had to call Verizon. And the guy answered the phone from home. And it took just as long for him to talk to me as it would have in the old days, except he didn't jerk me around. He just told me the truth. And he was clear and direct and thoughtful. And 9 minutes later, I got off the phone with an answer to my problem. And in that moment, something happened, because in that moment, Verizon wasn't a brand name. It was a human being who decided to show up and see somebody else. And so in the small, that's all people are hoping for from you. They know you can't make this all better, but you can show up and see them. And then you can act in a way that in August, the organization will say, thank you for acting that way, because it's August and we're okay now. So those are my non-tactics tactics. Who else wants to chime in? We can talk about other things too. I'm though enjoying this.
Hey Seth, this is Neil. Just had a query on leadership changes. So how do you break the barriers with leaders in an organization who are leaders because of the role they play? But then how do you break barriers to make them see things in a new light? Because obviously the world is changing. Yeah. And it's not the same as 20 years ago. It's not the same as 2 months ago. But then how do you make a reluctant leader see things in a new way and move forward, which is the best decision at this point in time, but there is just reluctance.
Exactly. Thank you for this, Neil. Going forward, please don't come off mute until we call on you, but I'm happy to take this question. So decisions, back to where we started. It's very hard to make decisions in areas that are completely strange and new, because you don't have enough data to actually make a good decision. You don't have a clue. What I have found is that bringing the right data to the table in a way that matches how a manager hears the world makes a big difference. So for example, a few months ago, I was talking to a guy who does customer service training. And many organizations have decided to make their customer service budget as small as possible, to get the operators off the phone as fast as possible, to move everything away. And you can show them all the graphs you want. It's not making any difference. So what we did, I said, take a bunch of phones and hand them to people and have them go into the field and record customers looking right at the camera, talking about what they are really frustrated about. 10 customers, 2 minutes each, about what's wrong. If you splice those together into a 4-minute video, it will go viral in your organization. And that 4-minute video of people looking straight into the eye of their customers, the people that they have previously pushed away, will become super real. And so what you've done is taken the data they needed to see and made it louder. And the problem we have in our culture, because it moves so fast, is loud data gets paid attention to. And so if you're not the decision maker, figure out how to make better data louder. And if you are the decision maker, be careful of loud data, because loud data isn't what you're here for. You're here to make a good decision. Tom Leary, do you mind coming off mute and we'll hear your question?
Yeah, hi, Seth.
Hi.
So I remember my question. So my question is that diversity of thought is important for a high functioning team. But if you're trying to create that following, how do you determine what the non-negotiables are beyond which your team can then thrive and that diversity can allow the team to perform?
Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. So how many of you have heard that super popular orchestra in which all 64 participants play the clarinet? Nobody. There isn't even a clarinet orchestra. And the reason is it would be horrible. Orchestras work because they have tubas and timpanis and trumpets and trombones. And diversity, it turns out, and Scott Page has shown the math here, diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of background pays for itself over and over again. Because if the world doesn't change, you don't need diversity of thought. If the world doesn't change and you have the most efficient candle making machine in 1842, you will continue to have the most efficient candle making machine, you win. But the world does change. And when the world changes, you will need to change. And when you need to change, an orchestra of clarinets is not going to help you. So we can prove that getting the right people around the circle matters. But there's so many buts. But number one, responsibility is a big issue. Because if you are not responsible for what you say, then you will just throw out whatever idea, what the hell, and things will not get better. They will just get noisier. And a diversity of thought in a situation like that ends up becoming a parody of itself, where people are talking about politically correct this and politically correct this, and I hate this and I hate this, and let's have another meeting about it. Everyone needs to be heard. Let's take a vote. You're paralyzed because no one took responsibility. And so we need a combination of diversity of thought and a willingness to take responsibility. And those two things must go together, not authority, but responsibility. And what it means to take responsibility is to say, time's up. We have to do something. I have heard what was said. I am going to own this choice. And if the person who does that is good at it, they will not pick the safe thing or the thing they thought of. They will pick the best decision. And if they're not good at it, they shouldn't get responsibility anymore, because they have shown an unwillingness to change properly in the face of change. And so Steve Ballmer almost destroyed the Microsoft Corporation because he had no room for diversity of thought, because he was filled with bluster, and because he demonstrated again and again in industry after industry after industry that he was willing to destroy the company in order to prove he was right. And you don't need a leader like that. You need a leader like they have now, because in that setting, a diversity of thought is how you rebuild the organization by pairing it with responsibility. What else you got, Marie?
There's a question from Matt. If Matt wants to come off of mute and share it with us. A few people have said they liked his question. So Matt, where I can read it out.
Yo.
Hey, Matt,
Great.
you're here.
Hey guys. So my question was, how do you become known in a market where you are unknown, in a place that you want to lead, but you're relatively unknown at the start?
Right. Love this. Love this. So happy to move into things that are a little bit more marketing focused. On the wall behind you, I notice you have a portrait of Pablo Picasso. Is that him? Yeah?
Yeah.
Probably. It's a signed original as far as I can tell. All right. So a couple interesting notes about Pablo Picasso. The first one is he painted more than 10,000 paintings and created and sculptures during his lifetime. And of the 10,000, only 100 of them were astonishing, rule-breaking works of art. So if you come up with a track record like Pablo Picasso, congratulations. It's a good reminder that even people we think of as stone-cold geniuses are wrong 9,900 times in a row. That said, the secret of becoming Pablo Picasso is not that you get picked by the Art Corporation of America or Art Corp worldwide, who then puts you on every billboard in the world. The way you do it is by finding the smallest viable audience, the smallest circle of people who you can earn trust with, hand on hand, one by one. It's probably 10 people. Everyone on this call has 10 people who will eagerly hear what they have to say, who will eagerly consume what we make. And now here's the question. After that happens, what will they do with what you made? Will they simply say thank you and go back to what they were doing? If that's the case, you picked the wrong 10 people, or your work isn't good enough yet. But if they can't go to bed until they tell other people, they will tell other people. And now you have 20, and then you have 40, and then you have 100, and then you're on your way. Every podcast that has ever been launched, with the exception of a few from famous people, only had 10 listeners to the first episode. Every blog only had 10 readers to the first blog post. So this method, 7,400 blog posts later, is how I got to 1 million readers. That's the only thing I did. 10 people got me 10 more people. The trick is you got to write something for the first 10 that earns you trust and attention and causes the word to spread. That is the hard part. So my friend Kevin Kelly coined the term 1,000 true fans. And in 1,000 true fans, the idea is, are there 1,000 people in the world who would pay you $100, right? If there's 1,000 people who would pay you $100, you're a professional, you're done. What I have found is that most creatives don't have 2, never mind 1,000, 2. Get yourself 10. If you can get yourself 10, you're on your way. Thank you for that. Thanks, Chrissy, for the kind words. And I'm going to let Marie chime in if she saw a question.
There's a good follow-up to Matt's question, and it's from Katie. And the start of her question is, I don't want to be famous. So I thought that would be a fun one to riff.
Let's go, Katie. Talking about. We're making Katie famous. Come off mute, Katie.
Hi.
You look how famous you are.
I know, look at that.
There's a button, you don't know this, but there's a button I'm pressing called Spotlight, and you are now going to be on everyone's screen until I end.
Great. Hi, everyone.
What's going on? What's your question, Katie?
My question was that I have a website and I have a following. I don't want to be famous personally. I never set out to be famous or to have myself out there. But everyone keeps telling me that I need to put myself out there and be present on my website and in my posts. So my question is, do you agree with that? Or can I just keep my brand going or my voice going on my website?
Can I unspotlight you now?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Love this question. So could you pick J.D. Salinger out of a lineup? Howard Schultz? J.K. Rowling, maybe J.K. Rowling, maybe not. Yeah. J.K. Rowling did not sell Harry Potter books and become the first billionaire author by being famous. She became famous because a whole bunch of people bought Harry Potter books. And there are no kids who say, can we go see J.K. Rowling? There are kids who say, wow, that looks just like Harry Potter. there are way more brands and interventions and narratives and movie directors who are unfamous than there are ones who are famous. And those people who are telling you, I'm not going to use air quotes here because it's against the law in Australia, that you should be an influencer, that you should get one of those hats that they wear on Instagram. No, you don't need to. And I did it on purpose for a reason, because in 1992, when I was building one of the first internet companies, we were competing against companies that had way more money than we did. And there were a lot of conferences in those days. And we decided, rather than running ads for our company, Yo-Yo-Dine, I would be in an ad for our company. And I would do the thing with the shaved head. I didn't have the glasses at the time. And I would just pay to give speeches so that people would hear what we were doing. So it is a path. It is possible. But guess what? On the list of the 1,000 internet companies that were worth the most money, we came in 1,000th. So no one knows what Jerry Yang or David Filo looked like. No one knows what Sergey Brin looks like. It is possible to build an institution or even a small thing that makes a thing without putting yourself out there. It is not necessary. And it gets to this whole idea of vulnerability and authenticity. What people want from you are ideas that they can use. They don't want to be your friend. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Seth, there have been quite a few follow-up questions about enrollment, the idea of enrollment. Jonathan has a great one that has kind of a specific angle to it. So Jonathan, do you want to talk to us about your question on enrollment, and hopefully it'll cover some other people's enrollment questions?
Thanks, Marie. So Seth, the question is, when interviewing people or new candidates to come on board for enrollment, how do you essentially sift through what's a good interview answer versus actually getting to the core of someone being genuine about wanting to be on your journey?
Yeah, love this. I have interviewed more than 1,000 people for jobs. And I thought I had one good approach, which was I kept making the interviews shorter and shorter because I discovered I rarely changed my mind after 5 minutes. But then I realized the right answer is don't interview people for jobs. What we do in my team, which might not work in your team, is everyone we hire works for us first. That there's enough freelance work in the world that we pay people to do freelance work for us. And if they're good, we pay them again. And sooner or later, we don't care if they're good at interviewing. We care if they are aligned with us in the way they do their work. And too many jobs have no interviewing skills required, and yet the only way to get them is to be good at interviewing. And so I don't know what to ask in an interview to find out if you're anything but good at interviewing, but I've come to the conclusion that if you are really good at working on a project when you're a freelancer, you might be really good at working on a project when you're part of the team. So that's been the way I've seen, show me, don't tell me. Marie, you want me to pick one or you got something ready?
You pick one, you pick one. I got to do the last two. There's so many good ones.
There are. So Felicity, it was a little while ago, but do you mind popping in? Felicity Gray, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
Hi, Felicity. You're on Spotlight.
Hi everyone. My question was, how do you, I guess, inspire a team to be innovative and bring their ideas to the table when they're very used to being managed?
Yes, and in your note, you mentioned young people in particular, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so 100 years of brainwashing don't go away so easy. For 100 years, we told people, if you're not good at third grade, we're going to fail you, hold you back. We're going to test you. Don't raise your hand, because if you raise your hand, we might humiliate you, particularly if you ask a hard question. Don't screw up on the field when you're playing cricket, because if you do, we're going to bench you and you won't get to play next time. I mean, over and over and over again. You have to have a resume, a CV. If it's not typeset the right way and doesn't have all the right keywords in it, you're going to be rejected. That is what we have trained people to do. So when you show up and say, anyone have any good ideas? Why should they raise their hand? They've been trained not to raise their hand. When you run a brainstorming session, for a few minutes it might be working because there's M&Ms and beanbag chairs. And then as soon as it becomes clear that you might listen to people, everyone clams up because they're like, well, if I say something that doesn't work, everyone will remember it was my idea. Better to say nothing. Now, to add to the stress, the other thing we brainwashed people was, and if you follow the instructions, you won't get fired. And now we're firing everybody. So if you want to know why millennials are bitter and selfish, not all of them, I'm just characterizing them the way someone my age might characterize them. It's because people keep double crossing them. It's because we said you should stick with a job and put up with a bad boss because it'll lead to retirement, but they see all their friends slightly older who got double crossed over and over again. So they're like, yeah, I'll take 6 months to go live in a van because you're going to double cross me anyway. I might as well double cross myself. Go live my life now. And then when I'm old, I'll have to work for someone who's an idiot. Right now, I'm going to do the thing I want to do. And it's really hard to argue with that because we broke a promise. At the same time, we warmed up the entire planet and endangered everyone's future. And so how do you get around this? Well, 2 parts. Part number 1, smallest viable audience of team members. You don't need to hire everyone in the world. You don't even need to hire everyone in Perth. You just need to hire the right people. So what you want to do is find people who get the joke, who understand at some level that they want to play by a different set of rules. You may have encountered in the breakout Taylor, who is the youngest person on my team. We hired Taylor right out of, what's that called? Penn State. What's their slogan? I forget every time. Penn State, we are, I am. And what you notice about Taylor in the first 2 minutes you talk to her is that she walks in with possibility in her pocket. She doesn't walk in and say, what's the minimum I need to do right now? She walks in and says, what will you tolerate me doing so I can make a ruckus around here? She's 1 in 100 or 500. Go find that person and then pay extra for them. Go to enormous lengths to find people like that. Figure out, if you're going to collect special snowflakes, how to treat them like they're special. Because if you don't, they'll go somewhere where they will be treated like they're special. And then you got to be really clear with your special snowflakes, with your team, with the people you are seeking to have lead, that it comes with responsibility. So they don't get to just say whatever they want and you'll take care of it. What it comes with is, now go fix it. Now own it. Now make the next thing happen. And so leadership in this setting is way harder than running a mattress factory. Running a mattress factory is super easy. Put piece A into piece B and I'm going to measure what you do. And if you want to go do that, go do that. But the problem is there aren't very many mattress factories where you can make a good living. What we have to do now is figure out what to do next. And you probably need a small team to help you.
Thank you.
Thanks, I'm ranting. This is great.
That's awesome. Thanks.
There's one, Seth, that got kind of upvoted. Deanna is the one to most recently shared, but how do you balance opportunity and risk taking when there is no data points or precedent to follow?
Okay, so this is probably a question to ask Nicholas Taleb more than me, because black swans show up here and there, but I don't buy the inherent question. I think it is possible to manage and lead for resilience. I think it is possible to make assertions and put scenarios into the world. So for example, when we launched the Alt MBA, I set out to reinvent online learning. That's a pretty audacious thing. We went from a typical course having a 3% completion rate to one that has a 97% completion rate. That costs 1,000 times more, that doesn't have any videos, that doesn't have any sort of, no. This is a risky project. Now, to spend $10 million on a risky project when it has to work because it's your last chance to raise money from venture capitalists, that's not how you stay in the game. It's not how you do 35 years of projects. You say, what's the smallest test case I could do here? Because if it fails, I will have wasted 4 months of my life. I can recover from that. I'm going to assert that I am onto something. But I asserted it all the time, right? I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of projects. I had more than 1,000 book proposals rejected when I was in the book business because each one didn't cost me very much to find out about. And so that resilience lets you keep playing. On the other hand, don't play a game where if you don't put enough chips on the table, you're guaranteed to lose. And this is the seduction that American media has had on entrepreneurs around the world. I'm going to build a startup here in Perth, and we're going to grow to dominate and replace Atlassian, and it's going to be a combination of Yahoo and Google all in one. No, that's probably not going to happen because very few things come out on that side. And if you want to come out on that side, you need access to a lot of capital that's really patient. Don't try that project. Try a project where you have enough resources to overwhelm the minimum viable audience, overwhelm the people you seek to serve so much that they will tell the others. And the reason this is hard is because now you're on the hook, because you can't blame anybody else if you pick this kind of project. If it doesn't work, your fault. Go pick another one. Back to you, Marie.
I think you picked the next one. I'm still, if
All
there's
right.
one that stuck out to you.
Yes, I pushed it out of my brain. I was ranting so hard there. I hurt myself. Go ahead. I'm gonna let Marie pick one.
Okay, there was
All right, I'm gonna do Amandat. Let's do Amandat while you're looking for the next one.
Okay, perfect.
Amandat,
Great.
come off mute. Talk to us. It's all right. I'll read it. With increasing financial pressures on a business, what percentage of money, time, and resources do you put to brand over lead generation activities? Oh, somebody.
Sorry,
Okay.
Seth, that was me. Thanks. Just some
Did I say it right?
Yeah, no, you did. It was looking for.
Oh, you're Amanda T. Is that your
Yeah.
name, Amanda? Okay, got it. Hi, Amanda. I'm putting you on spotlight. You want to amplify anything I just said?
No. You said it all good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so let's be really clear about a bunch of things. Brand is not logo. Brand is a promise. Brand is what people expect when they engage with you. Here's how to think about it. If Nike opened a line of hotels, crazy time to do so, we know what those hotels would be like. If Hyatt came out with a line of sneakers, you have no idea what Hyatt sneakers would be like because Hyatt has a logo, Nike has a brand. That's what a brand is. Brand is what you do, how you do it, the expectations and the promise. What does this mean? It means every time you are engaging with a human, you are branding with everything you do, the way you answer the phone, the products you make, the prices you have, the people you hire, all of it, it's branding. Lead generation, otherwise known as direct marketing, was named by my late friend Lester Wunderman, who started Wunderman. Cato Johnson was on the board of Yo-Yo-Dime. Lester said, direct marketing is action marketing. Direct marketing is measured marketing. If you can measure it, you will. And if you can make it go up, you will. And the internet turbocharged it because the internet said, Google said, Facebook said, see this ad right here? It's a nickel. You made 7 cents running it last time. You want to buy it? Only an idiot would say, no, you pay a nickel, you make 7 cents. So they run these auctions. Facebook's is fake, Google's is real. These auctions where people keep bidding more and more to get a click because they know what it's worth. Guess who gets to keep all the money? They do, because it's an auction. It's brilliant. What that means is that lead gen is a rapidly moving target because any company that can figure out an infinite path of paid for lead gen will quickly become the biggest company in the world. Very hard to do that because as soon as you figure it out, someone's going to outbid you and suddenly the juice isn't there. What does this all mean? It means buy as much lead gen as you can afford every day. The minute it's not paying, stop doing it. And in the meantime, realize that your growth, your persistence, your value comes from what people expect of you and what they tell their friends. Okay,
I've got one. Let's Nav, if you want to ask your question about parenting and how to get your kids to show up.
Thanks, Seth. I love you. My kid's right here.
Hello.
Say hello. I would like to impart some of your wisdom to my kids, and I'd like to understand how it is that a parent can help their kids to show up every day. They're at a stage right now when they're learning, but showing up is very extremely important, because sticking to your conviction and being fearless is extremely important. How do I impart that to my kids? What advice do you have for me?
It's true. Love this. Your kids are so lucky to have you. Thank you for being here. I think we don't create enough spaces for constructive, safe failure. So I would ask how many pages on Wikipedia your kids have edited so far, how many blog posts they've written, how much money they've raised for a nonprofit, how many poems they've published, how many kids in the neighborhood they've organized, how many shows they've put on, how many plays they've written, how many balls they know how to juggle. That education and learning are very different things. And we have overeducated many people. There's still 1 billion people on earth who have gotten the short stick and have been undereducated, but we have unlearned way too many kids. And creating an environment where a kid would rather do something, learn and fail, than tell you they did their homework, that's what you need. Because they'll figure out how to do their homework if it's important to them. But first, they've got to figure out why it's important to them. And it's important to them because it opens the door to the next thing. So there's a movement in the US called unschooling. And part of unschooling, and I helped a 12-year-old through this. He was having a lot of trouble in school. And because he had no enrollment, it wasn't working. He was going to end up in reform school or something because he was belligerent. And the parents were comfortable enough that they could afford this solution. They took the kid out of school. They gave him an office right next door to his dad's office. And they said, here's the deal. You are going to be in this room all day with a computer. You can do anything you want, but you got to tell us what you're doing, and you have to do something. And after 3 days of watching Three Stooges cartoons, he got bored enough that he decided to learn how to code. And then he learned how to do electronics, and then he learned how to do this, and he learned how to do this, because he wanted to. He wanted to build a robot. Well, if the only way you can build a robot is to learn to build a robot, he built a robot, right? And the point is, I believe that public school is urgently important. We call it that here in the States, the one that everyone goes to. Public school is urgently important because it teaches people to be people like us. But what happens from 3 p.m. to midnight in every house is some level of homeschooling. And if you're fortunate enough to not be working 2 jobs, if you're fortunate enough to be spending time with your kids, the question is, in that period of time, can you create an environment where you never ask them what their grades are, and you always ask them what they invented yesterday, what they shipped yesterday, what they built yesterday, who they helped yesterday, who they connected yesterday, who they led yesterday? There is something in that pile that they will say, that turns me on. And if they get hooked on that, you will have advanced humanity enormously. But none of your neighbors are going to reward you for it. Not for a long time. Another rant right there. All right, back to you, Marie.
Rants are the best, Seth. They're so good. There's, let's see. Oh, this is a fun one. It's from Joseph. Joseph, do you want to share your question about quitting?
Hi there. Hi.
Thanks for being here, Joseph. You're being spotlit.
Hi, everyone. So my question is really about quitting. Like, for instance, if you have $1 million idea and you're so convinced that you want to pursue this, and then you have like, you feel like people around you are like, you feel like you're at the edge and you don't know how to move forward. So when is the best time to like quit, or like, is it like, how do you like gauge that decision point, you know?
Right.
So,
okay, so you're talking about actually quitting a job, right?
yeah, maybe yeah, something like that.
Okay, so the first thing, which is semi-related, the minute you get $1 million idea, you should post it on a blog and give it away.
Right?
Yes, Ty. I don't know
Sorry.
what you're talking about.
Okay, Simon, I'm sorry.
I haven't been anywhere.
We're going to go ahead and mute you. Can you do
No.
that, Marie?
No, I don't know what you're talking
You've got to
about.
do it, Seth.
Okay. One second.
There we go. All set.
There you go. Okay, so if you give away enough $1 million ideas, you will get better at your ideas. No one has ever had $1 million idea in history. And as soon as you realize they're not precious, they will become more valuable. Because instead of keeping your idea a secret, and instead of protecting your idea, you will use your idea to help people. You will use your idea to build an ecosystem. And because you know it doesn't matter if someone steals your idea, you'll have another one, then you'll be fine. Because your problem, as Tim O'Reilly says, is not piracy, it is obscurity. And you know, I invented the Information Police Business Almanac, which was the internet before it was the internet. It was an 800-page book. We told people months before it came out what it was going to be. But everyone just looked at it and said, that looks like too much work. And so the hundreds of thousands or millions of copies we sold of it were fine, because our job was to give away the idea. If you want it, you have to buy the book, right? Give it away. I got another one. Fine. So with that said, if you got a day job, it makes sense to first figure out how to generate cash flow to give you the freedom to do the next thing you want to do. Because starting a thing and quitting your job at the same time is a double whammy. Instead, come up with a bootstrapping gig that you can start on weekends and evenings, a side project that helps enough people that you are making money regularly from the side project. Because once you're making enough money from the side project, you can turn to your family and say, I can quit my job. We're not going to go hungry. And now I have 40 hours free a week to go build a real company. Go do that. That's what you want to do. And you won't get hung up on the $1 million idea. You won't mortgage your house. You won't go around whispering to venture capitalists, because you're smart enough to have another one. So that's the stepwise process. That's the way I did it. And most of the happy entrepreneurs I know did it this way. It is really unusual to say, and even Howard Schultz from Starbucks, it is really unusual to say, no, I'm just going to hold my breath until someone hands me enough money that I can quit my job, or that I'm just going to hold my breath, quit my job, and bet everything, that's a low resilience play, that my idea is as big as I think it is. So thank you for that, Joseph.
Okay.
So Marie, it looks like we have about 15 minutes left. Is that about right on your calendar?
Or until you've got 4 minutes, I think, unless you're going longer.
All right, well, we're going to give people some extra time. I'll stay.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, is there one that you see on the list?
Well, Nicholas has a quick follow-up, but I'm having trouble with the chat and the ranting at the same time.
Well,
so Nicholas,
let's
go
go
ahead
with Nicholas.
with your secret thing while Marie looks for the next question. All right, I'll do it. He wants to know what we do about the fact that Australia is very NDA driven. How do you deal with that versus Silicon Valley? In the pharmaceutical industry, people say, how do we deal with the fact that we're so heavily regulated that we don't get to do anything? And in the stock market industry, people say to me, how do you deal with the fact that there are all these regulations about what, and on and on and on and on. All of these things are good. Constraints are good. Thinking outside the box is really hard because it's dark. Where you need to be is on the edge of the box, because on the edge of the box is where you have leverage. And leverage is what you seek. So the way to move forward with an idea is not to talk to someone who doesn't want to hear it. It's to talk to someone who does want to hear it, who will gain in status or some other thing they seek by being affiliated with you. Once you have enrolled 3 or 4 people in that journey, they now have a stake in your thing working because they want it to work too, which gets you to the next circle and the next circle. It keeps coming back to this idea of service, that what we know is that capitalism is broken for 2 reasons. One is side effects, is effluent you dump in the river, is things that hurt others that don't hurt you. And second is monopoly. That if you can build a monopoly, you can break capitalism by making an unlimited amount of money. many of the things that people would like to do involve building a monopoly. Building a monopoly is really hard. The alternative is creating community, building a circle of people who benefit by being in the circle, a network effect, a ratchet, that if it works, it will help them. That in the old days, we had fax machines. What did you do as soon as you got a fax machine? What you did was you told other people to get a fax machine. And the reason is you can't send a fax to yourself, because if you do, you get a busy signal. And so the fax machine had built into it the engine for it to spread. And that's what makes an idea that you can build something around. Not that it's a monopoly, but that when you find people who benefit from it, they will bring you other people who will benefit from it. And none of those people are going to steal your idea. They're just not. Email marketing, I couldn't give email marketing away. For 7 years, it took me millions of dollars to persuade people that one day email marketing would be a thing. It was a $0 billion industry. No one's going to steal your idea. That's the best thing that could happen to you, is they steal your idea. All right, Marie, let's do 2 more, I think.
Awesome. This one is from a little earlier in the Q&A, and it's from Matt Baxter. Matt, if you're still here, you had a question about what are some of the best ways in your experience to discover more about your tribe? So if you understand the practical empathy, all of that, but how do you figure out these insights? So Matt, do you want to come off mute and say a little bit more?
Yeah, thanks. I think you conveyed it pretty clearly, but I guess the question is just about how you actually draw people into your tribe. So obviously with digital technology, it's becoming easier than ever to engage with people who may not already know you in a really personalized way. But before you can do that, you need to understand who people are, where they are, what they believe, what they want, and what will motivate them. And we often talk about create personas, reach out to those people, but how do you practically, without going out and talking to 1 million different people or 10 different people, find those things out?
Right. Love this. There's a word for this. Good taste. So somebody who's not me, like my friend Annie, could look at you just from your shirt and your sweater and tell you another sweater that you would like. And she would be right, because she has good taste. And we need to develop good taste. And the way you develop good taste is by practicing, by picking a group of people who seem to be tribally aligned and listening, watching and listening. So when I started writing for Fast Company magazine, I wrote more words for Fast Company than I think anybody else, pretty close. I didn't know who was reading Fast Company magazine. I had an idea who was reading it. I was reading it. So I was writing for me. And after a couple issues, Bill and Alan sat me down and said, we get what you're doing, but that's not who's reading Fast Company magazine. And Bill and Alan built a magazine that ended up selling for $400 million US because they have good taste. They understood that they could assemble 1 million people based on design and writing because they had a hunch as to what they would like. If you look at the earliest issues of Fast Company and compare them to the golden age 2 years later, it's nothing like it is now. 2 years later, their taste kept getting better. They kept figuring out, when we write something like this, people do something like that. And it's not about A/B testing. If you A/B test a website enough, it will turn into a porn site, for sure. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about leading people to a place they don't know they want to go yet, because you've watched and you've listened, not asked them, because they don't know. John F. Kennedy did not ask anybody, should we go to the moon? John F. Kennedy just had a hunch. He had an assertion. He said, if I launch this project based on my good taste about the people like me that I am trying to lead, I will galvanize an entire planet for 10 years. And that was risky, but not that risky. Because if he had been wrong, the program would have stopped after 2 months. But he figured out that getting John Glenn to visit the White House worked, so do it more. And the reason we don't is because we're afraid. And so we copy people instead.
Okay, I got the
Marie,
last one.
Let's do one to wrap this up. You
Yeah,
guys,
this one.
before we do that, let me explain what's going to happen next. You all got an invite to a discussion board that we maintain at our expense. We're going to leave it open for several weeks. In that discussion board, you're going to be able to introduce yourself. You're going to be able to connect to people locally. You're going to be able to have that conversation that takes place around the coffee table at a real conference, except it's better because it's persistent. And if someone's not interested in you, you can walk away without making an excuse. And the only rule is there's no pitching. Do not view these people as your customers. Don't date your sister or your brother. Don't make pitches in the channel. Instead, go there, find people who are seeking what you're seeking and connect. It can persist if you want. The future belongs to communities of practice, groups of people who care enough about each other to level up. So I just want to say, this was a wing and a prayer replacing a Qantas 24-hour flight. And I want to thank everybody who took the time to be part of it. My coaches, our coaches are extraordinary human beings. Ashita and was here, and Taylor, who I already mentioned, Marie and Heath, Sam from Maine, which is like the Perth of the United States. I've mentioned Perth over and over again because my friend Bernadette used to live there. Yash, who is a rising talent in our team. Dean, Pete, the father of the noodle, who lives down under. You guys should get to know him. He's a hero of mine, etc. And of course, Marie. So with that said, let's wrap this up. Bring it home, Marie. What else you got for me?
All right, last question is from Ryan Jennings, and it's more about what are you working on? So I'll let Ryan ask it, and it feels like a really great way to end this amazing 2.5 hours together. So Ryan, if you'll ask your question.
Hey, Seth. My question was, now that you've got the Alt MBA up and running and it's a real global success, what's the next idea that you're working on that might not work?
Well, Ryan, you're a great correspondent, and it's good to see you in person. Thank you very much. The biggest thing I'm doing that might not work is that some people come to something like this because they think they want to talk to me. And the fact that I was able to leverage your talents to help you talk to each other, that I was able to leverage the coach's extraordinary empathy so that they could show up in discussion groups of appropriate scale. The idea that we want to run 30 of these leadership circles a month, which is nothing like what I used to be able to do when I was on my own, that's probably not going to work. It's not going to work because we brainwashed people that if Hillary Clinton isn't in the room, it's not a good speech. That if it's not the person who got on the plane, you didn't get something from them. I don't care. I don't care because it's the right thing to do because I have seen the changes it has led to. It is better for my ego to rant on stage. It is better for you to talk to each other and for you to figure out what works. So in the Creatives Workshop, only 300 something people in it. We get a new post every 90 seconds, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've got people who have streaks that have gone on for months and months without missing a day. And we're going to launch more things like that. This is what my new book is about. It comes out in November. It's about the fact that everybody is creative. I'm not a guru. I just have an action figure. Anybody who wants to can have an action figure. And so that is something I will persist on for a long time. It might not work, but it's a journey worth going on because I believe in you and the people like you because I've seen what happens when you engage with each other. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. And jump on the discussion boards. They're going to be a great place to continue the discussion, and can't wait to see you all there.
Go make a ruckus, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seth. Cheers, guys.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Seth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Seth.
everyone.
Thanks, Seth.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.